Good afternoon. Today we're going to talk a little bit about crafting. The most important aspect of crafting that I think everyone needs to know is that as you craft weapons and items, you increase your crafting proficiency. Here you can see that my primitive bow is maxed out at 4 out of 4. For all your primitive crafts, before you craft tier 2 stuff, like if I'm going to craft short bows, I need to craft its precursor to max first. By maxing this out first, it will make it so that when I craft short bows and long bows, it will increase in proficiency much faster. I believe it's almost 50% faster. So before you craft tier 2 stuff, go to the first link in the chain. So if I was going to craft poison staffs or acid staffs or any of these staffs, I would have to make primitive mage staffs all the way to max first. And it's quite easy to make them. For any primitive weapon, you can find it in your standard crafting menu, third button from the left. So if I want to make any primitive weapons, I go into the third button, tools and weapons. For armors, these are all the primitive armors you can craft. Keep in mind, something like trinkets, you cannot increase proficiency on crafting with these. Hopefully they add that in the future. But every time you increase your proficiency, you're going to increase the durability of your gear. If you look at my Grey Sword, it's green quality. It has 500 durability. But if you look at my Hunter set, it's white quality. It only has 350 durability. The reason increasing your proficiency, increasing that durability is so important, because if you look at my Hunter set, it has tier 2 enchants on it, right? So to imbue these tier 2 imbuements, it costs a lot of reagents, a lot of materials. That's why durability is so important. You cannot repair your gear, you have to use it until it is broken. So every time a gear, you use these reagents to imbue your stuff, and then use enchanting dust to enchant it, it's locked in, right? Like, you've just used all those materials, you want this gear to last as long as possible. So if I want to craft something, let's say I'm going to do commoner's clothes, right? When you're crafting, the amount of materials you're using in the craft will also affect the proficiency. So, since commoner boots only take 10 linen weave, and commoner clothes take 20, you'll see that I'm going to gain more XP for the clothes than the boots. Okay, see, that was quite a lot. But if we make commoner clothes and go back into it, you're going to see you're gaining double proficiency progress. So it is based off the amount of materials that you are using to increase the proficiency faster. Apart from primitive crafts that you have in your standard crafting menu, there are other armors that need to be crafted at workbenches. So hide armor and common clothes, as well as boar head, wolf head, stag head, are the only armors you can craft from your inventory. Primitive weapons are the only weapons you can craft from your inventory. If you want to make something like these tier 2 armors, or even tier 1 leather or tier 1 plate, you're going to need to use these crafting stations. So the tailor bench, for example, is used for anything using cloth, as well as hide, and as well as leather. Though to make tier 2 armors, you do need a recipe. Anything here, you need a recipe for. On the inner row, you do not need a recipe to craft any of these. For weapons, you used to need recipes to craft tier 2s. You no longer need crafting recipes to craft tier 2 weapons. It's great, I know. I'm happy. But something to keep in mind when you are crafting, if you're making commoner stuff, just use your linen weave, right? But if you're going to make something like scholar clothes, a tier 2 armor that takes very difficult to get resources like extracts, think about what material you want to use to make that with. Because every material that you choose has different effects. For example, linen weave, the most basic form of cloth, you can see 0% weight modifier, 0% durability modifier. But something like cotton, heat tolerance. Okay, maybe I'm going to use this if I'm going to a hotter area. Like, let's say I'm going to go fight fire elementals. That might not be bad. Something like wool cloth that increases cold tolerance. That would be good for ice areas. Silk cloth, again, good for heat tolerance, but if you look at it, right? Cotton cloth, no weight modifier, no durability modifier. But if you use silk, your weight modifier is minus 50%, durability is plus 25%. So silk is something very good to use. The reason weight of your armor is important is because of your encumbrance. So look here, right? It says armor encumbrance is 15. Your encumbrance directly affects your cooldown reduction. Here you can see I have 2% cooldown reduction. If I take off all of my armor, I have 10% cooldown reduction because my armor encumbrance is 0. So things like the weight of the armor that you're using are quite important, as well as the materials you're using. You can see that every material you're using has different effects on it. And that there is the basics of crafting.